リンクスタート。
So, how close are we to that? To laying down, closing our eyes, and playing a 1000% immersive world. Okay, well, when our brain is in an environment, it takes in information about that environment and sends it to our senses, right? Like light fields into our retinas or sound into our ears. Well, what about when there's no environment to take in, like when we have our eyes closed? Well, when we're sleeping, the brain displays information in the form of dreams. And for a technology to emulate a full dive experience like SAO and even The Matrix, I think it would need to work in tandem with the brain, taking in certain signals, thoughts like moving arm to slash sword, while also creating new signals like environmental data to send directly to our brain. In other words, it would be like having two brains, one that is you and another that is creating and sending information to you via sight, smell, taste, touch, and sound. Via sight, touch, taste, smell. So first, let's look at sight. In SAO, the characters close their eyes. This means the image is bypassing the retinas and displaying directly to the brain. So try closing your eyes. Can you imagine anything? Trees, fields, or perhaps words and colors? Point being, open your eyes. Point being, there's a difference between seeing and imagining. When we're awake, our retinas are taking in light fields and processing it as an image, processing it as life. When we imagine, however, we're remembering the forms of light to materialize images. So when we dream, it's almost like a middle ground. On one hand, there is no light to process. On the other hand, dreams can be as vivid as life itself. So for a technology to induce this middle state, I think it would need to emulate this dream state by sending images directly to the brain without displaying light to the retinas, while still allowing the brain to function as if one is awake. As of March 28, 2019, this is not possible, and from my research, there's no one working on it yet. But that's okay. Let's just say the user has their eyes open. They're looking at a screen much like current VR goggles. What about the other senses? So while there's no technology that can emulate taste sensations by working directly with the brain, we're pretty close to doing it externally. This is the Voxtail. By transmitting low currents through silver electrodes, this device can simulate sourness, bitter, and salty taste. It basically sends non-invasive electrical currents directly to the taste buds. Now, say if you pair this with colors that the brain typically associates with flavors like red for sweetness, yellow for sour, and white for saltiness, along with aromas from a device like the Nautilus Rift. In the future, one can imagine drinking digital bread and eating digital wine on a digital hillside after a hard day's work, clearing the hidden dungeon. Sound. Okay, so the answer to this one is obviously pretty simple. Earbuds. But what if we don't want to put something in the ear? Well, I got these things. These are bone conductivity earbuds, and they work by essentially vibrating the jawbone to transmit sounds to the eardrums. The downside to this being, of course, you can still hear the outside world, so it's not exactly immersive. Now, I can see these being used for more like AR applications when you need to stay in your environment, but for SAO, let's just go with earbuds. Sends electromagnetic. So while the nerve gear sends electromagnetic signals to the brain to emulate touch sensations, we can do something similar on, again, the outside of the body with ultrasound transducers. This is the Haptomind, and it projects ultrasonic waves onto the skin, creating different sensations. So say if you had a Haptomind projecting all across your body, you could feel wind breezes that aren't actually there. Another more practical option might be haptic suits. They basically have electrodes all around the body that can emulate pressure, coolness, and heat. By stimulating the muscles, it works naturally, meaning you won't get bruised. So we can feel getting hit with a digital sword, but how would you defend yourself? How would you move your muscles to grip a sword, or cook a digital stew by holding a knife without actually moving? So I think there's a few ways this can go. The first being haptic gloves. These can simulate the sensation of holding something when you move your hands to, well, hold something. The second being bypassing actual movement altogether and reaching the signals sent directly from the brain. Try looking at this image. Continue staring. Notice that? Your brain sent a signal there. Using external headgear, a team of researchers at Harvard have developed a system to read that same digital signal and move the tail on a rat, without actually harming the person or the rat. Heck, even this $20 brain device I got off Amazon can do the same thing. Right now, I'm controlling that game with my mind. I'm blinking to fire. This technology is called EEG, or electroencephalography. And paired with a VR headset like this, Tobias Anderson here is seen moving a character inside Fallout. When he thinks lift, his character jumps. While this could cause some heavy motion sickness at first, one can imagine a virtual world where you think, I want to pick that flower, as you pick up the flower. Seeing your hand move in-game as transducers emulate the touch of morning dew, bumblebee noises zoom from left to right, and fresh aroma of sunflowers fills your nose. But what of the dark side? In SAO, the players are trapped in the digital world. They've essentially given up their ability to manipulate their own sensations in favor of a device that does it for them. The difference, I think, in the real world is that all of our senses, all of these technologies are exterior. The nerve gear hijacks the mind internally, while the IRL technology seems to work in tandem with it. So on one hand, full dive VR may give developers more and more control to make their experiences more addictive. What we've seen with social media, but times 100. On the other hand, perhaps it's up to the individual not to get trapped in the digital world.